Well, everybody, welcome to Medicine and Science on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Pellavito. I'll be your host and moderator for today's program. And today's program, we're going to be talking about the anti-vaxxers. The anti-vaxxers, what I call it, the insane people have taken over the asylum. It's not very good. At one time when I was growing up, 94% of the population believed in vaccines. And of course, I had my vaccines because I didn't want polio. I didn't want diphtheria. I didn't want measles, mumps, chickenpox, and certainly didn't want smallpox. However, that was back in the 70s. Roll forward, and you have the land of misinformation, aka free speech, and you have a lot of gullible people who believe in some people. And now it's down to 69%, 30% of people don't believe in vaccines. Well, we need to make sense out of this nonsense. And with that, we do have a board certified physician in internal medicine who spent a lot of time in this area, I think more than 40 years, who's going to be heading up this program, none other than Dr. Michael Patmos. So we're going to bring in Dr. Michael Patmos, who can tell us a little bit more about this whole scene of vaccinations and anti-vaxxers, which it looks like the anti-vaxxers are like a disease in and of themselves. They're creeping up to where now 30% of the population believe, well, we don't need vaccines. But is that true, or is that what they call Memorex? What are your points?
Good morning, Nick. Good morning to the viewers. Thank you for the privilege of being with you again. My name is Michael Patmos. I am a board-certified internal medicine physician with added qualifications in infection control and hospital epidemiology, and I have been a passionate advocate for vaccination since I was a medical student, when I had the unfortunate experience of watching a 27-year-old bricklayer in perfect health, built like a linebacker, die of pneumonia from influenza, and had to tell his family, his wife and his 3 children, that their dad was gone. So ever since that experience, I've been a champion for vaccination. I never thought, I've always been concerned about the anti-vax movement, dating all the way back to 1977, but I never dreamed in my worst nightmare that they would get to the point where they are today, where they are in fact dominating public health in the United States and actually around the world. And so there's so much that can be said about the anti-vax movement and about anti-vaxxers. We only have a limited time. So I'm just going to pick out one recent thing that is of importance and relevance. As you all know, Senator Robert Kennedy has been taken over as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and one of his charges is what's going on at CDC. CDC, the Center for Disease Control, is the premier organization globally that coordinates with the World Health Organization, used to coordinate with the World Health Organization. They're now banned from doing so, to do disease surveillance around the world and provide early warning and early intervention to try to tamp down disease outbreaks that happen all the time. Anyhow, CDC has a committee called the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. And that committee has been around for decades, half a century or more, and it's populated by world-renowned authorities in this area of medicine. And they review all the literature, debate it. It's all in public. It's all available to the public. And it's a large committee. It takes public input. I think there are about 17 members of that committee, and they're all, world-renowned professors and experts. And they would debate the data and then come up with guidelines and recommendations that CDC would issue, that other states and countries could adopt. Well, one of Robert Kennedy's first actions was to fire the entire lot of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. These are some of the loftiest names in all of medicine. He fired them all, and he said they're all corrupt and owned by big pharma. They're all in the pockets of big pharma. They all whatever conflicts of interest they have are fully disclosed. They're all faculty members. Most of them are all faculty members at medical schools and universities. And then he replaced it with a dozen or so people who, none of whom are qualified at all to be on this committee. None of them are experts in this area of medicine. And they had their first meeting last week. It's a 2-day meeting. It was broadcast live, and all of the minutes and all the materials were available, and any person, any citizen could log in and watch this meeting and listen to it. And they had their 2-day meeting last week. And here are some of the things that came from that meeting. It opened up with Dr. Robert Kaldorf, who is the chairman of the committee, giving an introduction about himself. And Dr. Kaldorf lied in the introduction. He said that he was a physician. He's not an MD. He's a PhD biostatistician. He was fired from Harvard Medical School, and he opened the meeting by referring to himself as a physician, implying that he has an MD degree. That's a blatant lie. He's not a physician, and that has not been retracted. The meeting then went on, and the CDC experts present data, and then the members of the committee ask questions about the data. Well, what was fascinating was that most of the members of the committee had no understanding of the terms and terminology and the concepts of the research that was presented. This is basic epidemiology research, and there were members of the committee who were asking clarifying questions, reflecting the fact that they have no understanding of this at all. So these people are clearly unprepared. The other thing that was fascinating was, of course, the committee voted to ban vaccines containing thiomersal. There are no vaccines containing thiomersal anymore. It was taken out 30 years ago, not because of evidence that it is dangerous, but it was just done as a sort of to appease public concern as a matter of precaution, because it's not necessary anymore. It's a preservative, and it's not necessary anymore. But it's been gone for years. Yet they voted like it was a big deal to ban it when it's already not around, which basically serves to give encouragement to the anti-vax MAGA base that they had some big accomplishment. But other things about the ACIP meeting, one of the members, Dr. Michael Ross, had to resign abruptly just before the meeting because he was caught in a resume lie. Dr. Ross said he was a professor at George Washington University. Well, someone called George Washington University and he said, "We don't know who he is. He's not a professor here." So he was caught in a lie, and he found a face-saving way to exit the committee because he got caught with a resume lie. But here's the thing that I think was most despicable about what came of this meeting. Dr. Robert Malone, famous anti-vaxxer, is referred to by the Brownstone Institute as the apex predator of the anti-vaxxers. He's on the committee, and he's well known for spreading misinformation about vaccines. After the meeting, Dr. Malone posted on X or on Instagram, I think on X, he posted a meme that, and you can look at it, it's right there. It's actually I put it on my LinkedIn profile. You can find it on X. He posted a meme in which he has a picture of an Amish person, and then written over the picture of the Amish person, it says, "Remember when the Amish community was wiped out by a disease because they don't vaccinate their children? Yeah, no, either do I." Basically, the point of his meme is to basically suggest that Amish people who don't get vaccinated, for the most part, never suffered problems or complications or adverse impacts of not having their children vaccinated. I was shocked by that. First of all, it's very unprofessional. Why would a member of a prestigious government entity, the CDC, ACIP, be posting memes, satirical memes on X? That's kind of beneath the dignity of the office that he now holds. He's got a solemn responsibility, and he said he would be objective and look at the data objectively. He's got a solemn responsibility to offer sound advice regarding vaccination policy, and then to turn around the next day and post this, really scathing, satirical, disgusting meme, kind of exploiting an Amish person with false information, was really, I think, very unprofessional. But the thing that shocked me about it was he was suggesting that the Amish haven't suffered as a result of their faith-based avoidance of vaccination. How could Dr. Malone not know about what happened in 1979? Everybody, I thought, in medicine knows what happened in 1979. Maybe Dr. Malone doesn't know because he was only in high school at the time, but I think in his medical school training, he would have been taught about it. So here's what happened in 1979. Polio ripped through the Amish community and the Quaker community, by the way, and devastated that group of people in the summer of 1979. Among the Amish in Pennsylvania, 10 of their children were left paralyzed by polio. Polio, a disease that shouldn't exist anymore, for which there's a vaccine that's highly effective, ripped through the Amish and the Quaker community in 1979. How does Dr. Malone not know that? In 1991, 11 babies were born in the Amish community with congenital rubella. 9 of the 11 died. How does Dr. Malone not know that? Well, he was an intern in pathology at the time. And oh, by the way, that's the only graduate medical education he ever completed, was 1 year of internship. How does Dr. Malone not know that in 1997, a 12-year-old Amish boy died of tetanus, a preventable disease? Has he not know that? How does he not know that in 1999, there were 6 cases of invasive Haemophilus influenza B in the Amish, which is a disease preventable by immunization? How doesn't he know, excuse me, that in 2005, there were 350 cases of pertussis, whooping cough, among the Amish? Have you ever seen pertussis? You'll remember it. How does he not know that in 2014, there were 3 cases of invasive Haemophilus with 1 death in the Amish community? How does he not know that in 2014, 2015 in Ohio, there were 400 cases of measles among the Amish in Ohio? How does he not know that in 2016, there was a case of obstetric tetanus in an Amish woman who landed her in the hospital on a ventilator for months in critical care? How does he not know this? To suggest that the Amish haven't suffered as a result of their religiously based avoidance of vaccination is wrong. It is factually wrong. And so when he makes this post, there's only 2 explanations. Either he knows and he doesn't care, he'll say something that is misleading and false for whatever reason he likes to say things like that, or he doesn't know this. I think it is possible. I'm sure he really doesn't care. But he even said that, 250 deaths from influenza in children is a modest number. I guess it's a modest number as long as it's not your child that dies of preventable disease like influenza. But so I suppose he really doesn't care. But I think it's worse than I think he's not aware. Why would a doctor not be aware of these significant historical events in infectious diseases? Because he's not an infectious disease doctor. Dr. Malone, look at his CV. It's available online. He has 1 year of pathology internship, and that was followed by 1 year of a research fellowship. That's the extent of his graduate medical education. He is not board certified or board eligible in any specialty. He's not an internist. He's not a family physician. He's not an infectious disease doctor. He's not an immunologist. He doesn't have any clinical certification by the American Board of Internal Medicine. He's not board certified at all. He doesn't have any hospital privileges in any of these specialties. He's not a medical specialist. So he doesn't have infectious disease training. Maybe that's why he doesn't know about these events. Well, I think now he does, because a lot of people saw his post and have responded, myself included. And hopefully we've educated him. But I think the very important point is, if anyone suggests that the Amish have not suffered as a result of avoiding vaccination, that is false, is clearly wrong. The facts are there. I just gave them to you. And having children paralyzed by polio and dying of congenital rubella, suffering from tetanus and so forth, these are documented cases. Anyone who suggests that the Amish have not suffered is perpetuating a falsehood, either by omission or commission. I suspect Dr. Malone's not aware of this because he never completed his medical education. Unless you have done a residency and become board certified, you have not completed your medical education. Medical school is not the end of the medical education process. It's the beginning. After medical school, you do internship, residency, and fellowship. Not required to do fellowship, but certainly internship and residency. He didn't finish that step. So he's got incomplete training in clinical medicine. And so maybe that's why he's not aware of these things, but hopefully he is now. Anyhow, that's my comments for today, and I'll be happy to entertain any discussion.
Okay, Rick Rosner.
10 days ago, I went to get my seasonal COVID vax, because COVID still here is increasing on the West Coast, has hit Hawaii pretty hard because the spike started in Hong Kong. So it started in the West and it's moving east. And, I've got to fly. And anyway, I got it. And the guy at the drugstore said, good thing you came today. We only have 3 doses left. So the RFK machine is effing up the distribution of the vax. And I've been asking for weeks about Novavax, which is this vax that doesn't use mRNA. So if you're an anti-vaxxer and you don't trust mRNA, there's this new vaccine out for COVID, works like the old school vaccines, has fewer side effects, offers possibly deeper protection, and they're not distributing it. It's been FDA approved. But it's been a month, it's been 2 months since FDA approval. They're not getting it out there. Now they say maybe they'll bring it out in the fall in a formula that hits the kind of COVID that's out there right now. But I kind of doubt it, because RFK has also shut down the means to figure out which species of flu, which varieties of COVID are in circulation, so they can design the appropriate vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there's no question. When he was going through his hearings and so forth, Kennedy said, "Oh, I'm not anti-vax." He's clearly anti-vax, and he's doing everything he can to deny vaccinations to the public. He said, "Oh, I'm not going to deny anybody. If somebody wants to be vaccinated, we're not going to stop them." They're clearly doing that. They're clearly interfering with the distribution, production, and of vaccinations, and that's showing in the data. People are turning against vaccination. Vaccination rates are declining, and the inevitable consequence will be resurgence of infectious, contagious diseases. The microbes are apolitical. They don't care about the politics. They're sitting there waiting. They're out there, and as soon as we let down our guard, i.e., vaccination, the microbes will have the last word.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Patmos, how is your health at risk in the United States? Are we looking at this? When I look at the leadership you have there now, I'm very fortunate because I have health insurance here in Spain as well as the U.S. But after talking to people like Rick Rosner, it looks like my ability to even get vaccines is going to be diminished in the United States, putting my health at risk when I'm there. Well, I have the ability to come here in Spain and get my vaccines here, so I can kind of shrug my shoulders. But for the average American who may not be able to get these vaccines, is their health going to be at risk on a going forward basis?
Yes. In fact, it already is. We have a big measles outbreak this year. And not only have Americans gotten sick with measles and died, because it was such a significant, I think over 1,200 cases now, and it's still going on. Hasn't stopped yet. Mm-hmm. We're now exporting measles to neighboring countries. Canada suffered from this measles. Someone in Canada acquired it from someone in the United States. It's now spread around in Canada. They've had deaths and they've had a couple thousand cases, and we've actually exported it to Mexico as well. And a couple thousand Mexican people have gotten measles, and several have died. So we're not only at risk in the United States to Americans from this declining vaccination, we're now we're a net exporter in the trade balance. We have a positive trade balance. We're now exporting infectious diseases to neighboring countries, which makes us kind of like a third world country from a vaccination point of view. Think about it. All the countries in Central America have higher vaccination rates than the United States does. So these countries like, Mexico and Belize, they have universal vaccination. We don't have that in the United States. So we're a third world country.
Nick, you have a bunch of money. So if you come to the US and want to get vaccinated, you can pay to get vaccinated. Vaccination, I don't know if it's the same for every disease, costs about $200. Now, it used to be free until RFK came in and said, no, you have to be over 65 or have a, and now your people are losing their exemptions and have to take money out of their pocket. And if this big, beautiful bill passes, the number of people who have to do this will go up by millions and millions. And most people don't have $200 to take out of their pocket on the off chance that somebody around them has measles.
Right. Yeah. Also, Dr. Patmos, it looks like the Center for Disease Control has a disease in it itself. Is there any organization outside the CDC that can replace the CDC to provide some leadership in this particular area?
Yeah, there is. There's a couple of, that's an interesting point that you're making. One of the responses from the expert says, hey, if we can no longer trust the ACIP to give us correct advice because of the people are on the ACIP are unqualified, then who do we turn to? There is another entity called CIDRAP, C-I-D-R-A-P. It's run by Dr. Michael Osterholm, who is a internationally renowned expert in infectious diseases. And CIDRAP is now drafting and providing guidelines for doctors to rely upon, and the public as well. Also, you have the World Health.
How do you say that again? CIDRAP?
C-I-D-R-A-P. I forget what it stands for. It's C-I-D-R-A-P, I believe. It's Dr. Michael Osterholm. He's very, very well known. Another organization is the World Health Organization, of course, the organization that led the effort that eradicated smallpox from the face of the earth. You've heard of them. There's also the Infectious Disease Society of America. And then, of course, we have the specialty societies like the American Academy of Pediatrics, those groups. They all will now be stepping up and providing information that's reliable and based on evidence. I think we can basically disregard the ACIP now because it's populated by unqualified experts who don't even understand the basics and who lie about their credentials. Dr. Calder says he's a doctor. He's not a doctor. In any case, I think it's just for pure entertainment purposes now to watch what the ACIP is doing. They're totally unqualified. And so we have to look to other sources. I think most physicians now are going to turn to CIDRAP and IDSA and World Health Organization for their recommendations.
Everybody is going to be searching people who've lost their health insurance, which could be 12 million people in the next few years, and people who never managed to get insured. Everybody has to do their own research, and we know from that's not a great thing.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, but there is a lot of good information available on the internet, but there's also a ton of crap information, and
and there's also a whole bunch of very complex infectious disease studies that require training to be able to interpret. When you do your residency, it's now required in every residency program, whether it's internal medicine or surgery or OBGYN, the ACGME, or the LCGME, the committee that accredits graduate medical education programs now requires, and they have for the last nearly 20 years, that all resident physicians have to take a course called critical appraisal of the medical literature. It's a semester-long course, or a year-long even sometimes, where you learn how to interpret the data. It's really technical and difficult. A layperson, really smart layperson, might be able to, kind of waddle their way through these complicated articles. But I got to tell you, as a physician, it's not easy. The statistics and the data is an average layperson is not able. Robert Kennedy does not have the training to be able to interpret these studies. It's very technical. It's like reading a technical manual for a nuclear weapon. You have to have training, and to say, just do your own research. Well, you can't. You can't read these papers unless you know what you're reading.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Patmos, just really quickly, along those same lines, my mother was very glad, and I was having a conversation with her a couple of days ago, that she went and got another booster shot and everything like that for COVID and all along those lines, and she was making sure that I had gotten mine, and I'm due for another one. And I know that even Rick has had
Yeah, good mother.
as well, and all along those lines. So I was just wondering, how often should we be getting these booster shots? Because all these anti-vaxxers would tell us that we don't need to get them as often as they were told to get, and everything like that. So I was just wondering, how often would you recommend people get the booster shots with these new variations coming out?
Well, I defer to the data and the recommendations of the experts. I don't make up recommendations. I defer to what's out there. But here's my understanding. When you get a COVID vaccination, there's two kinds of immunity. The first kind of immunity is called humoral immunity. That's the antibody titer. They're like molecules that are in your blood ready to catch the virus when it comes in. They go up and then they fade over time. And as they fade, you can become susceptible to getting COVID. And people say, oh, that means the vaccine has failed. No. There's another kind of immunity called cell-mediated immunity, which is in your lymphocytes. The lymphocytes, cell-mediated immunity, does not wane over time. It persists. And what that does is that's your immune system's memory. It's actually in cells called memory lymphocytes. Those cells remember the vaccine, and if they see that virus, they crank out the antibodies within about 24, 48, 96 hours. You get a new spike of antibodies. So getting vaccinated, getting boosters gives you a high immunity, humoral immunity, which gives you protection from infection that's mild. And the cell-mediated immunity, which is enduring, if you've had even 2 vaccines, you have good cell-mediated immunity, and that protects you from death. And that's why even people who've only had 2 or 3 COVID shots are far less likely to die of COVID or end up in a hospital. If you don't get boosters, you might get COVID, but you'll get a very mild disease. So how often should you get it? I'd say once a year. Personally, that's, I think, what the data suggests. And I'm due for mine now. This will be my 9th COVID shot.
Yeah, I think this was my 10th. I get it. I try to get it a couple times a year. And I try to time it to hit the spikes in COVID, because COVID has seasonal spikes. It gets pretty low in the summer, and then end of summer it heads up, and then around Christmas it really spikes. Also, what's going on in my life? I have to get on a plane. I'm going to a wedding, so I got the shot. Now, you talked about the CDC. The CDC has been in a defensive posture since 1976, when they guessed wrong about the swine flu. They told everybody that swine flu could turn into a huge pandemic, and got everybody vaccinated, and turned out to be kind of a false, they bet wrong. America was lucky, and also the vaccine made some people sick, and so they were attacked politically. And for the past 50 years, there's a book about it by Michael Lewis called The Premonition. This is the guy who wrote The Blind Side, who was made into that Sandra Bullock movie. Really good writer. He writes about what happened to the CDC. They kind of handicapped themselves a little bit based on events in 1976.
I remember I had the swine flu vaccine. That was the year before I started medical school. I was in graduate school at the time. I remember it well. Yeah, it was, that one didn't, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
No one was perfect. They didn't get that one right, but they get it right most of the time.
Until now, and now who knows what'll happen.
Well, now it looks like they're going to get everything wrong. So because of the leadership, in other words, I always like to know who's managing the company. And when it seems to me that the management is very weak, you have an attorney who doesn't know what he's doing, and then he brings in a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. You can't follow that group anymore. So that's the reason I was looking, okay, where else can you go? It looks like the World Health Organization is a good one to go to. And this one is news to me, CIDRAP. But the thing is, we want people, our viewers, to know there's alternative sources for good information. And please don't rely on the CDC anymore, because I'm not sure if their information is going to be good anymore. Coming out of that place, giving news that in charge of
their information is also being strangled. If you go to the CDC website for COVID and other respiratory diseases, their sharing of the data has been it's
Corrupted.
stingier now.
Yeah.
And it's harder to interpret.
Right, it's been corrupted, but well, we're at the half hour, so we do want to thank Dr. Michael Patmos, who's board certified in internal medicine, to give us some updates on these anti-vaxxers and for people in the United States to be aware of your health risks that are taking place, actually coming from Washington, D.C., and it doesn't seem like it's good. So please consult your own physician, and we'll see you next week on Medicine and Science. Bye-bye.